Hi, I'm Sten Vesterli, and this is Beneficial Intelligence, a new weekly podcast with stories and pragmatic information for CIOs and other IT leaders. This week, blaming the humans. A Danish frigate accidentally fired a Harpoon anti-ship missile. It wasn't supposed to happen. It was an accident that couldn't happen, but it did. This was back in the 1980s during the Cold War, and a weapons systems officer was testing the system. He knew that the launch key was in the captain's safe, so the missile couldn't fire, but it did. Fortunately, the launcher was pointed towards land, so the missile impacted an uninhabited area, destroying a few summer cottages. But if the missile launcher had been turned the other way, then this anti-ship missile would have cruised down the Great Belt towards the ferries, and it would have found a ferry, a big juicy target, and it would have impacted a ferry with hundreds of people on board. Fortunately, that didn't happen. There was an investigation, and the initial investigation cleared the weapons officer of any wrongdoing because it was an accident that couldn't happen. But this was during the Cold War, and it didn't really look very good that there were about 180 NATO ships sailing around with missile systems that could just accidentally launch powerful anti-ship missiles. So the report was classified, the conclusion was rewritten. The captain was reprimanded, or the weapons officer was reprimanded and disgraced. But it wasn't his fault. It was just expedient to blame the human. The Boeing 737 MAX 8 airplanes suffered 2 fatal crashes. And Boeing's initial reaction was to blame the pilot. Now, lots of aviation accidents are caused by pilot error. But what's hidden behind pilot error is the fact that it could have been prevented if the pilot had acted exactly right in exactly the right way in exactly the right time. And for the Boeing 737 MAX 8 accidents, there was a window of opportunity of only 4 seconds. Now, if the pilots had diagnosed the problem correctly and had reacted within these 4 seconds, they could have saved the aircraft. It was classified as pilot error initially until there was a second crash, and it turned out that this was an unrealistic expectation of the pilot. Last year, Citibank accidentally paid out $900 million. They didn't mean to. They only meant to pay a small amount of a loan. But a bank officer accidentally clicked a wrong checkbox and transferred the entire loan amount. Citibank tried to claw the money back, but a federal judge said, well, you paid out the loan and they can keep the money. So there was about $500 million that Citibank would have liked to have, but they didn't no longer have because they had paid them out in error. Management, of course, blamed the individual who had clicked the button, saying, this is human error. We are blaming the humans. In all of these cases, it's true that the apparent reason is a human. There was a human who did something or who didn't do something, and that is what caused the incident or the accident or the mistake. But there's always a whole chain of things that had happened that leads up to an accident. And in accident research, we talk about the accident chain. And if you remove any link from the accident chain, then the accident doesn't happen. We just see the human as the last part of the link. So because the human did something bad happened. But there were many places where we could have prevented the human from doing this wrong thing. So the Harpoon control software was eventually fixed. the Boeing flight control software was eventually fixed. And Citibank is now considering a long overdue revamp of their arcane, old-fashioned backend systems into something modern and user-friendly. Now, if they had had a modern system, the user would have received errors, warnings, the full amount would not have been populated into the payment field. Lots of things that could have been done differently, but wasn't. That's why it looks like human error, but there were many ways where the system could have been better, so the error could not have occurred. As a CIO or CTO, it is your job to make sure that your organization gets the maximum learning from all the bad things that happen. And you're already creating incident reports. When the database goes down, when a production system crashes, when we're rolling out something that calculates things wrong, then we have an incident and we report it, we analyze it, we look for the cause. But are you blaming the humans? Look through some of these incident reports and find out what is the conclusion. If the conclusion is that a human did something wrong and they should just be trained better, then they haven't really identified the root cause. If the human did something wrong once, he or she will do something wrong again. Saying that we just need better training or people just need to follow procedures doesn't help you. If it can be done wrong once, it can be done wrong twice or 3 times or 4 times. Where you need to break the accident chain is somewhere in the system design. And if your incident reports are blaming the humans, then you haven't really reached root cause. Thank you for watching Beneficial Intelligence, a weekly podcast with stories and pragmatic information for CIOs and other IT leaders. If you like this content, please spread the word. If you have comments, please get in touch. See you next week.